You know, the country that is of most concern to the countries coming to this Manama Dialogue is Iran because of its troublesome behavior in the region. It's a bête noire to almost everybody. But for many of the countries, the biggest problem about Iran was temporarily resolved last year with the Iran nuclear accord, the agreement between Iran and the 5 major powers that blocked all of Iran's paths to a nuclear weapon. Iran's centrifuge program was reduced by 14,000 centrifuges. Its program to produce plutonium was stopped by pouring concrete into the reactor that could have produced plutonium. Iran's stockpile of low-enriched uranium was reduced by 98%. Huge cuts and limits to Iran's nuclear program. And so far, that accord, now almost a year old, has been honored by both sides. But both are accusing the other of not honoring the accord. Many Americans and many in the Gulf region are saying that Iran is violating it because of its missile tests, because of its behavior assisting Houthi rebels in Yemen by propping up the Syrian government, which is using chemical weapons and barrel bombs against its own citizens. These are all examples of very bad behavior, but they're not part of the nuclear accord. The nuclear accord was the nuclear accord. It stopped Iran's nuclear program in its tracks to be able to produce weapons. And it has resulted in benefits to everybody in the region. On the other side, the Iranians are accusing the United States of not honoring the accord because many banks and foreign businesses are reluctant to do business with Iran. Iran's not getting all of the international commerce that they had been led to expect. In fact, the expectations were overplayed. This was not good of Iran's president to give the idea that all sanctions would be off. There are a lot of sanctions remain in place because of Iran's human rights violations and so forth. And the banking system in Iran is very opaque. You don't really know who you're doing business with. You might be doing business with somebody in the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps who is still sanctioned. So banks are cautious about this, and that's why they're not getting all the business that they wanted. The United States Congress recently agreed to extend the Iran Sanctions Act for another 10 years, giving the authority to impose sanctions. It doesn't actually impose any new sanctions, just extends the authority. In Iran, there was great fury at this step, accusations of the United States violating the deal. They didn't violate it. The deal called for the government to try to get the sanctions lifted. Obama tried. He failed because Iran is such a notorious country. It's a 4-letter word in the United States because of its bad behavior. And so legislators didn't want to let the sanctions expire. They extended it again. And it's Iran's fault because of their behavior. Now, Obama tried. He's been very, almost bending over backwards to try to keep this deal in place. What will Donald Trump do? Well, he spoke very harshly against the deal. But he's smart enough to know that it would not be a good idea for the United States to be the one that rips up the deal. He'll put pressure on Iran because of its missile tests and so forth, and then see how Iran responds. If Iran is the one that breaks the deal, then the rest of the international community would agree to put sanctions, reimpose sanctions on Iran. So that would be the strategy of the United States. Don't be the one to break it, let Iran break it. But I would say, it's better that nobody breaks it, because keeping this deal intact would keep the limits on Iran's nuclear program so they wouldn't be able to produce nuclear weapons, and we would all be safer as a result.